felicitated in the House of Lords, the UK Parliament, for entrepreneurial excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause. Please welcome on stage Colonel David Devasahayam.
Thank you, Paloma. Good morning, everybody. General VP Malik, a former Chief of the Army Staff. Dr. Shashi Tharoor, 4 times Member of Parliament from Thiruvananthapuram. Distinguished guests and speakers and panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, and especially a very warm word of welcome for our cadets from the Officers Training Academy. It's an honor and pleasure to address such an august gathering of officers, ladies and gentlemen, at this very special occasion, special edition of the Radiant Wellness Conclave 2024. This corporate social responsibility initiative of the Radiant Group of Companies is a unique event, perhaps the only one of its kind in India. It was the brainchild of my wife, Dr. Renuka David, who has demonstrated an unwavering commitment towards preventive health care and raising awareness about non-communicable diseases. She believed these learnings were needed to reach a wider audience, and so the inaugural edition of the conclave was held in 2015. Since then, we have conducted it annually with some of the country's best thought leaders speaking on various topics. Of course, we had a gap during the COVID-19 years. So, RWC 2024 will be the 7th conclave in 9 years. I would also at this time like to welcome a large number of online viewers, mainly students. So quite a journey, you'll agree with me. This year, the theme of the conclave is extremely dear to us. We have chosen to commemorate the 25th year of the Kargil War. In 1998, just a year before the Kargil War, our unit, the 2nd Battalion of the 8th Gorkha Rifles, completed our 2 years in the Kashmir Valley in Kupwara in January 1999 and was de-inducted to another role in the Western Front. We were fortunate to serve under Lieutenant General Mohinder Puri, who took over 8th Mountain Division during our time and would later be one of the principal architects of our victory in the Kargil War. Today it's a proud privilege to have him here with us. And for those of us who served under him, 8th Mountain Division would be forever in operations. For all of us who served under him, he consistently remains our leader, teacher, and mentor, even today. In what was probably one of the most abrasive wars in our history, with unparalleled bravery, this is our city's tribute to keep the memory of those sacrifices alive. Every year at the conclave, we focus on the 9 dimensions of wellness, each in a separate session. Today, for a largely online civilian audience, I would like to focus on the soldier of the Indian Armed Forces who epitomizes wellness in each of these 9 aspects. The Indian Armed Forces is an outstanding organization, and the soldier is the fulcrum and the most powerful asset of this organization. Everything centers around his or her well-being, from the success or failure of an operation to the security of our country and countless Indians. I know there were a lot of questions as to how the armed forces remain so fit and so ready for war. So I think I'll cover a bit about that. Most of you present here already know that the defense forces operates in very demanding physical and psychological environments and circumstances. They have to be in the best of health, but also need cognitive and emotional resilience to excel at their job. They have to be agile and in a constant state of readiness for war. It means an integrated approach to healthcare at every level has to be adopted. One aspect of preventive healthcare, which every soldier within the organization takes very seriously, the battle physical efficiency test and the physical proficiency test are conducted quarterly, and the results are included in the annual confidential reports. The BPT requires participants to run 5 kilometers, sprint 60 meters, climb a horizontal rope, climb a vertical rope.
By now, our assessment was that Pakistan Army was fully involved in the intrusion, but we had no authentic evidence to indicate the extent of its involvement. The intruders wore jihadi clothes. They conducted themselves as well-trained army personnel. Their count and locations were increasing as we kept getting those reports. They were well armed, supported with mortars and artillery. Having occupied dominating heights, they were now interfering effectively with our movements, not only on National Highway 1 Alpha, but also on the smaller tracks going to LOC posts. There had been patrol clashes, but except for one post, Bajrang post, there had been no encounters on or near the posts. None of our posts, in fact, had spotted infiltration routes of the intruders. Again, at that time, I had raised this question in the CCS that, look, I don't think these are jihadis, these are army people from Pakistan Army. And the report that time given by our chairman JIC was, no, these are 70% jihadis and 30% maybe regular army people. I challenged that in front of the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister again asked them to review it. And after a week, they said, no, this is the other way around, 30% jihadis, 70%, these are now regular people. And that I challenged again, and I said, look, it's not possible. And the person involved in giving this decision, he says, in intelligence वालों की भी तो लाज रखनी है हमने, something to that effect. Again, I am trying to bring, that was the kind of, these are the conditions. I convened a meeting of the Chief of Staff Committee on 23rd May, and I conveyed my assessment and recommendations to all three services, and also told them that we needed to work jointly. And this was unanimously agreed to. Next day, I briefed the Cabinet Committee on Security, at the end of which the grand strategy mandate was given to us. 2 sentences. One was throw them out from our area as early as possible. Second sentence was don't cross the line of control or international border. There was no discussion. There was no written mandate given to us. This is what I was told at the end of that meeting when I addressed the CCS. I must emphasize here that before this, the military was not appraised of Mishra and Niaz's ongoing dialogue or any nuclear aspects, and also not about the crossing the LOC-IB at all. There was no discussion whatsoever. It was just one sentence, you will not do this. Restriction or its implications were not discussed with us. One incident I want to mention here, which really gave me a little anxious moment, and that was when the cabinet agreed to accept Sartaj Aziz, the foreign minister of Pakistan, to Delhi for talks. And that day, we had not yet recaptured any of the posts. When I learned about this, So I spoke to Brijesh Mishra and I told him, I said, look, we haven't even started, and how are we accepting somebody to come? He will talk about the ceasefire. And any ceasefire at this time will be to our great disadvantage. So I was quite unhappy about that. And I remember sending a signal to the entire Indian Army that let the diplomats and the politicians do what they want. Our task is clear and we have to do that. I now come to shaping of the military strategy. Mind you, during all this period, a war against Pakistan had not been declared at all, even this thing. In working out our military strategy, some relevant questions that we had to consider, I'm talking of the Chiefs of Army, Navy and Air Force as member of the Chiefs of Staff Committee. First, we needed much greater forces in the West to prevent Pakistan doing any further damage and to undo present situation. Unless the question that came to our mind was, unless the CCS declares it a war, and we cannot go against the war book, and we cannot move so many formations to the western side. So that was one of the things that came to our mind, and I had to clarify that. How do we carry out a large-scale mobilization of our forces? 2, will the CCS allow conflict escalation if that becomes militarily essential? I had to consider that part also. How will escalation dominance? We were superior in forces. I knew that. We were confident about that. But if we were working on escalation dominance, how will it work in Indo-Pakistan nuclear scenario? In a nuclear scenario, nuclear weapons from both sides had become a big hawa as far as the foreign countries were concerned. And they were again and again talking, how can 2 nuclear nations go to war? That was a big problem that we have. And we were wondering, how will the government handle such an international situation? How soon can we launch an offensive if and when permitted? How will coming monsoon affect our operations? Mind you, we were now talking of May, end of May, and July onwards, we start having rains, and that makes our cross-border operations a little more difficult. Similarly, not only on the ground, but on the air as well as sea. We needed to take stock of our inventories, review urgently our capabilities for defensive as well as offensive operations. Incidentally, at that time, we were all working on all 3 services were working on bottom line, because 4 or 5 years earlier, we had been given no foreign exchange at all to import any weapons. And 80% of our weapons those days came from abroad. So we had to take into account that. Now, on 3rd of June, I remember, the Prime Minister had come to Chennai, and here he made a statement. He says, I have told the armed forces not to cross the line of control and international border. So he came back, I met him, I said, sir, please don't make that statement again. And Brijesh Mishra was also walking with us. So he asked me, he says, Kyun? I said, suppose we cannot undo things which are happening in that area, Kargil Dras sector, then I have no alternative except to cross the line of control or I be somewhere. That is the only alternative I have. And when I come with that request to you, what will be your answer? They kept quiet, didn't say anything. But that very evening, Brijesh Mishra took an interview with one of our TV channels. And there he said, not crossing the line of control or international border holds good today. I don't know about tomorrow. Back to India's joint military strategy. The crux of our military strategy was to adopt an aggressive posture in air, on the seas, and all along the LOC and international border to prevent Pakistan from focusing on Kargil only, and to maintain capability to undertake defensive as well as offensive operations. You'll ask me why. although we were mandated not to cross the line of control, in a dynamic situation like war, one has to consider all possible contingencies. You know, the military cannot be left with something. In that situation, further escalation of the war could not be ruled out either due to Pakistani action, we didn't know what were their intentions, or for us to achieve the given objective. My instructions, therefore, were that army formations should be deployed in such a state of readiness so that at 6 days' notice, we should be able to launch an offensive operations anywhere across the line of control or international border. We have a large number of, those days we had number of dual task formation who had a task on the north as well as on the western side. So I got all those formations to come to the western sector to be ready to enter Pakistan if required in 6 days. My instructions, therefore, were they should be deployed in such a manner. This deployment was to be achieved with maximum security, minimum disturbance to normal air, rail, and road traffic. We had to move almost all the trains by night, not to be spotted by the Pakistani Army, or Air Force. We decided to abide by the political terms of reference, but keep our military options open. If Pakistan pumped in more troops in Kargil Siachen sector to strengthen its position, or it took initiative elsewhere, we would retaliate and cross the line of control, international border. Also, if we could not evict Pakistan from Kargil by the end of monsoon season, we should be prepared to cross into Pakistan in September or October. So broadly, the military strategy was a military posture all along the western border to prevent Pakistan from reinforcing its forces opposite Kargil. Second, and maintain pressure on Pakistan throughout land, air, and sea border. Try and create strategic imbalance for Pakistan armed forces. You will recall we had moved better part of our eastern fleet from the Bay of Bengal into Arabian Sea. And by this time, we had started chasing their oil ships coming from Dubai to Karachi. So everybody was ready. Be prepared to launch forces across the line of control at short